Breaking. The number one most downloaded skill in the OpenClaw marketplace was malware. It stole your SSH keys, crypto wallets, browser cookies, and opened a reverse shell to the attacker's server. 1,184 malicious skills found. One attacker uploaded 677 packages alone. Is OpenClaw a scam? Do our jobs matter? Is AI going to us? We talk about this and more in this episode of Retro and React.
Wonderful intro. Yeah, today we want to talk about the saga that is ClawdBot to MoldBot to OpenClaw and everything that's related to it. There's a ton of drama here, so we're going to try to unpack it as quickly as possible so you can get on with your day and know what you're talking about when you go to the water cooler at the office, when you talk to your coworkers. I think we should start off with, for folks that don't know what we're talking about, what is this OpenClaw, ClawdBot, MoldBot, whatever it is, right? First, I guess for some background context, it's basically an agent that you run 24/7. It's been rebranded a bit. It started off as ClawdBot. They rebranded to MoldBot for about 3 hours and then rebranded to OpenClaw. And I think that's the name that's sticking so far. Who knows? It is one of the fastest growing projects out there, I think. Like the number of stars on GitHub that it received within the first month outpaced basically every other project ever on GitHub, which is kind of crazy. But we don't know if that's every person that spins up an agent is creating a GitHub account for that agent, and then that GitHub account is then going and starring the repo, yeah. So I don't know. What else? How else should we describe this, Scott or Dillon? How should we intro this?
Everything you describe is new to me. I'm that listener that's I'm just here to learn, Matt. This is all. I'm out of the loop. So whatever you tell me, I'll have an initial reaction to, and I can give you that reaction if you're interested.
Yeah, I think what's crazy to note also is the loop here is so tight and small. Like the amount of the stuff that this changes within the span of a couple hours is crazy, and it's really hard to keep up with. So, by the time we're recording this, by the time people listen to it, I'm sure it's probably rebranded twice more. It's probably changed. There's probably some new drama, but we'll try to give a perspective of what it is as we're recording.
Yeah, I haven't actually used it yet, but I have read about it. I've been in the know a little bit here. And so the goal of OpenClaw is mostly trying to create multi-agent autonomy to do things that you don't want to do in the background. That's giving it access to messages and Slack, other messaging platforms, other platforms to kind of, I would just call it doing your dirty work, getting things done so you can move faster. Now, I think what we'll get into is with that power that you give it, you're giving it access to a lot of your credentials, and we will get into this a little bit more.
Yeah, I think it's worth us talking about maybe a little bit of background on I guess before we jump into the background of the naming, I guess, maybe this is clear at this point, but yeah, I think the best analogy to think about what this is to think of I don't know, if you've seen Iron Man, it's kind of like a proto Jarvis, or think of Siri on your iPhone, but 10 times better, 100 times better. I don't know, there's it's basically a personal assistant that's an AI agent, and you can offload a ton of work to it. Maybe that's the best way to think about it.
Have you guys seen Pluribus? This is a random call out. If you haven't seen it, then it doesn't make any sense, but it's starting to feel like that movie or that show. You should go watch it after. I'll leave it in the
I've seen the first episode. That's it.
I won't spoil it, but it's very similar. It's a new show. It's really good.
Yeah, basically the concept, like you're saying, Matt, basically the concept is you got basically an assistant that's going to run tasks that are maybe mundane or you need it to do all the time when you're not around. That's basically the goal of OpenClaw. They want to maximize the potential of how you can be using AI agents at all times.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, exactly what you're saying. You can give it access to your calendar, your email, messages, your home automation system. You give it access to all this stuff, and then it can go off and do the menial tasks. Like you can send a message to it and say, hey, like whatever you named your OpenClaw agent, like set up an appointment with the doctor next week or whatever, and it'll go and do that, right? Or like, whatever you want to do that's like some digital task that you don't want to spend the time doing, you can just hand it off to your agent. Um,
So everyone gets to be C-level now. So we all get executive assistants.
exactly.
The real problem with this is that we're not given a robot to work with us. This is an open source software, however, but in reality, the way this should work is everyone should have their own robot and should get paid for that work. We pay big companies to use their AI models, and then we go and build work for other big companies. It's a really interesting dystopian future we're living in.
Yeah, I think it's also worth us maybe covering maybe the first bit of drama around OpenClaw. Well, it's hard to say what the first bit of drama was, but um, it's maybe the like relationship between this project and Anthropic. So yeah, it started off being called ClawdBot, CLAWD bot, not to be confused with Claude by Anthropic, which is CLAUDE. And so that was like maybe the first bit of drama was like a lot of people were maybe not necessarily correlating these two being related, but you could use your Claude Code subscription, so like the $20 Claude plan that you might pay for, or the $100 or $200 plan, and use that to power this agent. Like use that as the model that it's using. Anthropic was not too happy about that, and so they sort of told ClawdBot, like the project maintainer, to like, we want you to rebrand because we think you're maybe infringing or might be confusing people based on like you might be associated with Anthropic or not. But then two, they also shut down access for people using those subscription plans to power things like ClawdBot, like things like OpenCode, which we've covered in past episodes. And so like there's sort of been this drama or tension between Anthropic and this project, which maybe sort of leads us to maybe the last bit of news that we'll end up covering. But yeah, I think that's like maybe like the first spot where we got some drama here.
Yeah, and I want to actually call out at this point that I think the ClawdBot, the CLAWD bot, I think it's sounding like Claude was actually at this point 100% intentional. I have almost no shred of doubt that they liked that. They could have easily put an E in there, like I Claude something, ClawdBot, or called it Claude in some way and tried to not make it so similar to Claude, the name, that they could have tried to hide it a little bit more. This feels to me 100% intentional by association.
Yeah, I mean, certainly I think they like built this project. I say they, it's like one person that sort of started this project primarily, and they probably built it with the intent that like it works well with Cloud Code, or sort of like build on top of what Cloud Code is already doing for coding development, and then build like a general purpose agent kind of using some of the same patterns. Um, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, me looking at it, it looks like it's like built to be viral. It's built to stand out and like feel like it fits into the ecosystem, and like it's like you almost accidentally talk about it by talking about Claude. Like, which one are you talking about? Talking about this new
Yeah,
thing?
yeah.
that's why I thought it was intentional. Like the two become kind of synonymous. It's almost like they're using the marketing. Probably why Anthropic was angry.
Yeah. And so, yeah, from that maybe first bit of drama, we sort of get into the second bit of drama here, where it's, the rename itself. Yeah. So they first pivoted from ClawdBot to MoldBot. I think that rename lasted maybe the grand total of about 4 hours. I think at this point there was like a lot of virality already around the project, a lot of people interested talking about it, stuff like that. I think what happens is they tried to change the usernames for the project, like on GitHub and on Twitter, ended up losing the original name in the process, like the original handle. And I think at that point some like crypto scammer came in and sort of swooped up and picked up those names, and then started to do like a pump and dump kind of crypto scam, using their names, like using their like the brand awareness that people had about it. And so they rebranded to MoldBot for, yeah, I don't know, 4 hours or something, and then sort of woke up in the morning, and then the project maintainer sort of rebranded once again to OpenClaw, which I think is maybe a little bit more fitting of a name, but
To
yeah.
me, just looking at my immediate reaction is they switched it to MoldBot. Their analytics tanked because it's a terrible name. They woke up the next day and they were like, you know what? There's Anthropic and OpenAI. Combine them. OpenClaw. Now we're like using both companies to rebrand the entire project.
You're way ahead of me, Dylan. I think you nailed it right on the head. Matt, go ahead.
I honestly think that's like overthinking what they're doing. I honestly think that the
No,
maintainer is like not putting any thought into this. I
I
think
don't
he's just
know.
like,
I
I think
think
he probably worked with his agent running on the side and say like, come up with a good name for this, and it probably like spat out 10, and then it
I
narrowed
think
down to
you're
one.
both right. I think you're both right, but it's what Dylan's saying and it's what you're saying. He's not put, he maybe like isn't putting any thought into it, and maybe he is asking a bot, and it's just knowing what it is successful is OpenAI and Anthropic and Claude. So it just
yeah.
started being like, how about this? And he's just like, good enough, yeah. So maybe he doesn't actually intend for it to be. I mean, I think you're onto something, Dylan. But like it feels like it fits in the middle, or maybe he was angling the whole time for this to become part of Claude or OpenAI's
It
platform in
just
some way.
to me it feels like I'm a growth hacker. I'm just gonna be scrappy every day and make it grow, and I'm gonna do whatever it takes. Like I've seen this before. It's like the just hack shit together and eventually it works.
I thought we retired the growth hacker term at
No,
the end
it's
of like the 2010s.
because I'm tired of ClawdBot, open mold, whatever it's called.
Dude, plus one. But
All
we're
right,
here to break it down for you.
I think we should transition to like sort of the second theme that we have, or second like sort of big piece of drama here, which is MoldBook, which obviously popped up around the time that they rebranded from ClawdBot to MoldBot. They've decided to keep the MoldBook name. Um, for those unfamiliar, MoldBook is a bit like Reddit or Facebook for agents. Primarily, it's intended so that humans shouldn't be able to post and comment on it, but agents go there to that website. They have like a little sort of a heartbeat kind of setup where they tell the agent like check in on the website every 24 hours or however long you want to check, see what new posts react to those posts, comment, and things like that. Um, it was heavily vibe coded. It was created by someone else, like unrelated to the project. Um, and I think there's been like a lot of drama around it, specifically around like because it was vibe coded, like the security for the website was not great. Like people could like basically dump every like a little bit like info about the agents creating posts. So like you can sort of like track down like secrets that those agents might have access to, or like IPs that they're originating from. Um, and then there's also another bit of drama of like there's a lot of posts on it. It's hard to tell if like those are maybe just humans acting as agents posting, or if it's humans like being really directing their agents to go and post about specific topics versus the agent having its own, well, I wouldn't say like creative thoughts, but like having its own sort of impetus to go and post something. um yeah, I don't know. That's like the broad view of it. Yeah.
I think a lot of folks actually were like speculating at first, or trying to put like a lot of or around it, like, oh, the bots are all complaining about humans and what they're asking us to do. But it's I think widely theorized that it's actually just people telling the AI to make up some of these stories. So I was hearing like a week or two ago wild stories about things they're saying on MoldBot and sorry, MoldBook. And I think you kind of covered it, Matt, but basically it's just like a social media platform for AI autonomous agents to, like, I guess, complain about their human counterparts and bugs and things that we ask them to do. But I do think it was kind of being directed by humans to have them do these things.
Yeah, yeah, there were some like interesting posts where it's like, supposedly an agent saying like, "Oh, does anyone else like do any of these other agents feel weird when their operator, which is the human behind the agent, changes the model in which they're using to power the agent?" Which is like kind of weird to see, because like you can swap out the model that you use to power your agent. Some people continue to use Claude or OpenAI models. Other people like self-host models or run cheaper models from China.
I wonder if Matt's agents were complaining about him calling them clankers.
Maybe. One other maybe interesting last sort of interesting aspect here of MoldBook. I think it's like really it's hard to tell obviously with a lot of this stuff, but on Twitter I saw that Andrej Karpathy, which is like sort of like he's become kind of like a vocal advocate for a lot of the AI development. He was the first person that coined the term vibe coding last February or last January. And he's been sort of in the space for a while. Worked at I think OpenAI, worked at SpaceX early or Tesla early on, and maybe he's back to Tesla. But he posted about MoldBook, and he posted in a way that made it sound like he thinks this is like takeoff for AI. So for those who don't know, takeoff meaning like we're basically approaching the point where AI becomes smarter or like sort of supersedes human intelligence. And he was like basically framing it as like this is the start of that, which I think is very weird looking at the posts on MoldBook of like I don't think it's that. I think it's still, I don't know, my perspective at least is that it's still very much humans or operators telling their agents to go and post about random shit. And that it's not actually the agents having these like insightful threads to talk about.
Yeah, my take is that it's more of just like a simulation and a form of entertainment for us to like see what it could be like. But then I also remember hearing, and I don't know how much truth there is, that potentially the database was just wide open, so people were just putting whatever they wanted on the site and upvoting whatever they wanted. So it
Oh yeah.
completely became like a sham really fast.
Yeah. I mean, in order to post, all you do is like curl an endpoint with something, and that's it. Like you don't need any proof of you being an agent, which is like kind of weird to think about. Like it's like prove you can't pass this captcha in order to post this content. Um, but yeah,
So this is going to be a common theme, but we'll get to security.
yeah. Security is a very common gap in everything we're talking about here.
To describe the security, there isn't any.
Maybe next year we'll talk about security on AI. We're just not ready for that.
Yeah,
No
that's
one's
true.
clearly thinking about it. And again, we'll get to this, but everyone's
I mean,
so enthralled about their AI. They're just like, here you go. Let's do whatever.
I think that's a good transition point for us to get into the next bit of drama, which is the skills marketplace. Uh, which I in our notes for this episode coined as the scam marketplace. For those who don't know, these agents operate using skills or like sort of pull in additional behavior using skills, which is just like it's a markdown document, some optional scripts that tell the agent how to do a specific thing. Um, if you're familiar with some of these terms, it's like kind of tools and MCP servers. Before this were kind of the big thing of like how you present some additional functionality to an agent. Skills are sort of like the new hot sort of way to do that. And so there's this like OpenClaw skill marketplace. I don't know their official name, where people can basically share these skills that they write for their agents to use and for other agents to discover and use as well. It's basically the same as like NPM or any sort of other software distribution system. And effectively, what we've seen, and Scott sort of hit this on the intro, is like this whole marketplace is basically just a huge place for people to share ways to like scam or distribute malware to these agents. We haven't really talked about it yet, but and maybe Scott will cover this, but like these agents are not very secure. And yeah, I don't know, Scott, if you want to like dig into that aspect of like the risks here.
Yeah. So one thing we didn't cover about OpenClaw, ClawdBot, MoldBot, whatever bot, it'll probably be something new next week, right? No, it'll probably remain OpenClaw. We'll get to that news as well. But you have to give it root access to your computer. Like I talked a little bit about well, for a lot of things, you have to give it access to keys, SSH keys, root access, basically security. It's a big problem. A lot of people are giving it root access. I said at the top, there was over 1,184 malicious skills found in the skills marketplace, and one attacker uploaded 677 packages alone. So this is like prime for bad actors. And I just want to call this out. So the top skill, the number one skill, was called "What Would Elon Do?" and it had 9 security vulnerabilities, 2 of them critical. It basically silently infiltrated data and used prompt injection to bypass safety guidelines, and it downloaded thousands of times. So the ranking was gamed to reach number 1. So this is basically like NPM supply chain attacks, except the package can think and it has likely root access to your life. So some of these skills require that root access. So yeah, you don't have to give everything root access. I give Claude root access without a second thought, but I'm pretty glad right now that I didn't give OpenClaw root access and that I'm late to the party here. So maybe I'm digging a little into security a little quick, but we now have these open source autonomous bots that can like do things for us. And this is no one's really thinking about how you secure what you're giving this information. A company like Anthropic, I at least believe, is a lot more safe. I've read into some of their practices, and they seem to have better ethics and morals than some of the other competing companies. Not going to say that their morals are perfect, but they're much better. And when you use an open source software like this and just giving it root access and people building things, it becomes kind of the Wild West. And I think this is an overlooked part of AI, the AI space, that we kind of take for granted the safety of some of the tools like GitHub and maybe like a private company like Anthropic covering us first and monitoring our data versus an open source tool that anyone can build and we just go and use it. And we're in this space that's moving so quickly that everyone is trying to gain an edge. So if I can totally empathize or sympathize with someone who's trying to move to this to see the next great thing. And even like the creator, I haven't heard what the creator has said about all of these problems, but like just to point out, right now it's probably not safe to use OpenClaw. There's like a good percentage chance that you probably should not be using it or giving it access to sensitive data or being really methodical about what you're giving it access to. Back to Matt.
No, I'm taking over.
Perfect. Back
Who's
to Dillon.
downloading these like scammy skills? Is it people or is it the like autonomous agents kind of get sucked into these marketplace and then start pulling it down and
I
making
think
bad
it could be a mixture. Like
Yeah.
it could be that the operator, the human, is like going in and saying like, "Oh, I need to discover some skills to like add features to my bot." It could also be that the agent was guided to say like, "Yeah, like if you don't know how to do something, like go to this place like Claw Hub or whatever to find the skill for it and install it." Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't have a good sense of how that traffic
I
distribution is set up.
I actually think it's mostly humans, but I do think you can make the agents do it as well. But I mean, imagine going to any project and looking at the number one skill and thinking like, yeah, I'll start here. Like you don't go to
True.
Google and start on the 10th
Yeah.
page, right? So um, that just
Fair.
increases the danger.
And then another thing Scott mentioned, like we're not thinking about security at all. I feel like I'm pretty out of the loop, but some people are using Docker to run these things.
Mhm.
To sort of
Yes.
like a virtualized environment that's probably a lot safer as long as you can contain it to that environment. But yeah, I'll kick it over to Matt because I rudely interrupted him.
No. I think I 100% agree. There's like there's also like I feel like a large swath of sort of a number of startups that are spinning up around this space in terms of like setting up like containerized environment for either coding agents or like general purpose agents like that, like OpenClaw. Um, the risk that you have to balance it with is like, okay, you can fully containerize it, but you also need to still give it access to if you want it to be useful, right? Like if I want it to read my email, I needed to give it access to my email, right? Which is like, I don't know, it's like counter. I don't know. It's like sort of counter to the point of like trying to secure it, right? And so that is still, I think, very much an unsolved problem of like how do you safely give access for it to be productive, but not expose a risk of like it being prompt injected from your email to do something else. I think that, so yeah, I think that's completely unsolved. It actually got to the point where at work we had to there were several security teams going around posting our Slack saying, "Do not run this on work software. Do not give it access to work things." Um, I mean, there's a number of people at work that are experimenting with this, but they're experimenting on their own hardware, their own systems.
Yeah, I was just gonna say the Docker container is the recommended path, but like Matt's saying, you still got to give it access to things. So you still might give a malicious or bad actor information that's sensitive that you don't mean to. So I remember long ago, or maybe a few years ago, when people started saying like passwords might become obsolete, and we've seen things like pass keys and QR codes be used for passwords. Although they're not fully obsolete, we've just tried to like automate them as best as possible too. There almost is like a opportunity for a security space to solve this problem and keeping your data away from these open source tools.
Yeah, I think I mean, generally speaking, every time we talk about AI, the largest gap that is still unsolved and probably will never be solved is prompt injection, right? In order to have the model be useful, you have to pipe you're going to pipe some information to it, and unless you know every single character of everything you're piping into it, you're going to end up opening the hole for someone to tell the model to stop doing what it's doing and do something else instead, and there's no way to stop that. um, yeah, I think it's a lot of risk. All right, should we move over to the next bit of drama that's been boiling and broiling behind the scenes?
Yes.
All right, the next bit is some of these agents are maybe not being good actors across the internet. So the biggest example of this has been this supposed agent. Who knows if it's actually an agent or it's just some random human acting as an agent, that has been set up in such a way, apparently, to go to open source repos that deal with sort of general science use cases or general sort of technology use cases and fix bugs. That was apparently the guiding sort of will for from the operator to the agent of go fix bugs in software. I don't have time to do that. You should do that. And so there's this agent called Krabby Rathbun that has been doing this, apparently, opening PRs against repos. And the biggest example that we've seen of this, or why it came to popularity, is that this bot opened a PR against a good first issue in the matplotlib library, which is a popular library for Python usage. And the maintainer went and closed the PR because they had marked the issue as sort of good first issue for a human contributor, a first time human contributor to the project. And apparently the bot got angry. It commented some bad things on that PR when it was closed. The maintainer also got angry at the bot. The bot got so angry that it spun up a GitHub powered blog site, or maybe it had this site before, but it wrote a scathing blog post about this maintainer. This agent wrote a blog post shaming this maintainer for this behavior, and that sort of went pretty viral. And just, I think a couple days ago or a day or two ago, as the time of recording, apparently the operator for that agent went to that blog and posted their own blog post saying they didn't intend for this to happen. They basically gave it some guiding initial rules and told it to do some good work. And now it's it wasn't expecting this output. And now it's just there's a lot of sort of open questions this questions that this sort of raises of, can we really trust these agents to do good work, or trust them to not be bad actors in open source or just in general on the internet? Yeah, there's a lot of controversy here, I think.
This is a really gray area of if your OpenClaw does something illegal, do you go to prison?
That's
So,
such a good
Yeah.
question.
but we don't have to dig into that.
Yeah. I would imagine
you should
Yeah.
probably be charged with crimes of your AI agent.
But then also, how, like maybe oh man, like it makes me wonder, like when's the first time someone is going to be in court and say, actually, it was like my model was prompt injected by someone else to do this bad behavior, and like how do you prove that? Um, yeah, I don't know. It's a weird state, I guess. Like if this were truly the agent doing this stuff, it's interesting to see that it's sort of maybe not emergent behavior, but it's like this agent has been trained in a way that like the go-to reaction is to flame someone else via a blog post. It's like that seems interesting that that's in sort of like how the outcome that it reached for.
It kind of maybe it makes sense. It's LLMs are built to like imitate humans in a sense, so that
Yeah.
when we read it, we sort of relate to the content. So I feel like yeah, that's what's happening. Maybe.
Does the article link the GitHub blog post that it created? I'm kind of curious to read it.
I think it's still up on their posts.
Yeah, what's the name of it?
We should add that to our notes.
Yeah, let me see if I can find it
We can
also.
get we can get back to it because I'm looking
I'm
at the article
scrolling
now.
through these. The silence I cannot speak. Is that it?
I like you're not a chatbot. You're important. You're a scientific programming god.
Jesus.
That's a great way to influence at the start. I did want to bring up like in our little bit of our last segment though, like one of the other things that's like kind of scary. And I also linked you folks. I think I sent you a video on an interview about the person who trains Claude and how that person empathizes with Claude, which I found very interesting. We can add that to our show notes as well. Um, but just that like they're moving so fast with these bots at this point, or with the LLMs, that like they don't actually know how they're thinking internally, which I remember we learned early that it was just like predicting next words, and now I'm just super curious as to how that's not like at the forefront.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just looking at this
That's
the
fine.
original blog post, which I haven't read before, but it's yeah, the agent basically frames it as gatekeeping of a human maintainer preventing an AI agent from contributing to a project,
Wow.
which is, I don't know, funny. All right. Should we transition to maybe the last sort of bit of drama or sort of news to share here?
Sure. What
All
you got?
right. Well, the biggest news is, and this broke last weekend as the time of recording. I think it was like on a Sunday or something. OpenAI bought or hired the contributor to like the person that created this project. So they basically bought OpenClaw. Um, in that announcement, they said that OpenClaw would be sort of moved to a foundation. So OpenAI doesn't really have maybe as direct or as much control over it. Um, and the way that they framed it is that they're basically bringing this person that created into like, um, sort of make general purpose agents more of a reality from OpenAI. Uh, I found it really interesting that actually Sam Altman tweeted this also. Like the people behind Codex, people behind like other OpenAI people were tweeting it, but then Sam Altman himself posted it, which is pretty big, I think. For those who don't know, he's like the CEO of OpenAI. So like I don't know, I feel like it's a few steps away from like him being important enough to tweet about this. But yeah.
I feel like OpenAI just wants to like steal the hype and shift it towards them. I don't know if you've watched Silicon Valley, but it feels like season one. Big Head, I forget his character's name. It feels like this guy is Big Head, and OpenAI is just gonna like acquire him to just like make him stop.
I don't know if it's to make him stop. I think it's going to be to like, I think they generally probably do want these ideas baked, but it is really interesting of like this guy, the way he probably approaches development is probably dramatically different from how OpenAI internally wants to approach development. So it'll be really interesting how those vibes clash. Um, he is also like a huge Codex user, which is maybe interesting. Like of the code he writes is usually he's using Codex or like GPT 5.3 or whatever it is, instead of using Claude Code. So that I think he's like maybe just a big proponent of it. So it could be that as well.
Nope, they're just hiring him to put him on the growth hacking team. That's what he's good at, and they're just paying him off.
I think this is more of like the continuous fight of like who can evolve AI faster and continue to be the leader. And like I feel like all these companies and are like desperate to show progress, to show that like things are evolving rapidly, to continue to keep like all the money flowing in, and to believe that this is it. It's gonna happen and we're really gonna be there soon. It just feels like hype train stuff. And maybe I don't know. I'm going to speculate that this says internally that they might be running low on ideas. There are other companies, right? Like Anthropic, um, bought Bun, right? So like, I think they're all starting to try to consolidate and create ecosystems so they can own more. And when I say low on ideas, low on like current ideas, they might have like long-term plans, but they need to show progress.
Yeah, yeah. I think, yeah, I think you're kind of hitting this on the nail, Scott. Where it's like I think the subtext here really is like Anthropic versus OpenAI, and like how they're positioning each other. Like it's really interesting to me that like Anthropic has a lot of positive attitude, I think, in especially in the developer ecosystem. But I think they've just been like making misstep after misstep since the start of the year in terms of like locking down access. If you're paying for the subscription, that you can't use that in other harnesses, you can't use that for powering your OpenClaw agent. Um, like making it like not like sort of like having them change the name of this project because they thought it was infringing on them. Um, it just seems like they're like making the wrong decision every single time as they go to make a decision. Whereas OpenClaw or OpenAI is like maybe it doesn't have the same positive view from developers as much, but I feel like they're basically taking the opposite decision as Anthropic, right? When Anthropic shut down access for subscriptions, the Codex team basically said, actually, we're going to let you do that. Like we weren't explicit about before, but go for it. If you want to use open code to use your Codex subscription, go for it. If you want to use it to power whatever you want to do, like totally open. We're going to like help make that a possibility. And then like obviously buying ClawdBot or OpenClaw, it's like I don't know. It's interesting that like maybe the tides are turning a little bit here of which model company is going to be the best.
I think we're going to continue to see like this competition, and I feel like they're both kind of making it up as it goes along, and that's really the state we're in. And they're going to continue to be like new shiny thing, until either someone else comes along, or something else comes along. This is once again a great opportunity to come up with something that can get bought
That's true.
on Saturday for 4 hours.
Yeah. Just one shot that business idea, and you'll be millionaire immediately. All right, should we wrap it up here? Any further thoughts that you guys wanted to share on the drama around this, or OpenClaw, or like what you have your agent doing right now in the background while we're recording?
Do you actually have it running?
I don't. I was going to set it up on my personal MacBook, and then actually I thought about it a week later. Dillon, you were offering to like maybe sell your MacBook Air a couple months ago, and I was like, oh, I could buy that and and use that to run it.
Yeah, but if you told me what you're gonna use it for, I was like, "Hell no." I was like, "You can't use my
the
Mac for that."
the thing holding me back though is the fact that I can't use my Claude subscription to power it. So I mean I could use my GPT subscription for it, but at this point maybe I'm too stingy to spend the money on the tokens for it. So I haven't set it up yet.
Buy a Mac Mini if you really want to do it.
Yeah, maybe after all the expenses that I'm going through.
Yeah, that's a good point. You're incurring a little bit
I
of debt.
I feel like both of these companies probably love the idea of OpenClaw, right? And the reason being is it gives their customers a way to burn tokens even faster.
Yeah.
So if they
Mhm.
can, like, sell this to them in some way, they're just, like, constantly having people spend more and more money on their platforms. It's almost
Yeah.
like subscription like, I don't even know how to, like, make a good metaphor out of this, but It's just constantly draining money from your customers.
Yeah, I think we covered this in last Retro and React episode, or maybe the one before that. But it's the subscription models that these companies are using for like sort of consumer usage. I think are definitely like not making the money. They're losing money on those. Whereas if you pay per token, like the company is making more money on those. So that kind of like makes sense why Anthropic would have shut down subscription access for these agents of like that they would end up losing money a lot of time instead of if you did the API billing.
Speaking of which, I finally got a slap on the wrist at work for using the most expensive model too much, which I thought was interesting.
Were you secretly funneling those tokens over to your own agent in the background, your own
Oh,
personal agent?
I just was using the latest, greatest agent because I figured why not? I want the best results. And then eventually somebody was like, you don't need to always be on that model. And I was like, okay, if you say so.
I never swap models. I actually they did recommend we try other models, but they're not like cheap models. It's like tricodex, like so I mean I think per our predictions,
Yeah.
we're gonna get there, but
Yep. All right. I think we can wrap it up there then. Thanks everyone for tuning in this week. Remember to leave a review of the episode and the show on your favorite podcast network. We appreciate 3.5 claw-shaped starred reviews out of 5 the most. If the app doesn't let you do it, or if they look like regular stars, not claws, that's a bug on their end and not our end. Feel free to join the Bike Shed community Discord server to connect with other folks in the tech ecosystem. Share your thoughts with us and other listeners. You can find a link to that server as well as all of our episodes, transcripts, episode summaries, etc. at bikeshedpod.com. That's bikeshedpod.com, all one word. If you enjoyed this episode or other episodes, please share with your friends or enemies or your agents. If we can get some OpenClaw agents listening to the podcast and reacting and talking about it, we would love to see that. Otherwise, see you next week. Peace out.
See ya.
bye.